I rise in opposition of the National Defense Authorization Act, a position I do not take lightly. I have supported the final passage of each NDAA that has come before me in the Senate up until now. For my tenure in this body and well before me, there has been a productive bipartisan tradition when it comes to this bill that authorizes funding for our military, supporting those in uniform, and keeping our country safe. Most years we come together on a very quintessential country over party deal. One that I would argue is all too uncommon, but still this was an important annual ritual that carried serious consequences. This is not to say that we do not have our differences. Of course we do. But we know our commitment is bigger than those differences. This year, that commitment to our service members, to the people we all represent, and to our security and safety was broken. It has been broken because some Republicans decided that gutting the rights of our service members to score cheap political points was more worthy. Let's be clear. We're talking about parents who are serving our country in uniform, having the right to consult with their family's doctor and get the health care they want and need for their transgender children. That's it. They want the right to get whatever health care is best for their child, something I imagine all parents want. And the health care we are talking about here can sometimes be life-saving. Some folks estimate that this will impact between 6,000 and 7,000 families in the military. I, for one, trust these service members and their families to make their own decisions about health care without politicians butting in. It's flat out wrong to put this provision in this bill and take away a service member's freedom to make that decision for their families. Look, this problem has a solution, a simple one at that. My amendment would strike this provision that guts our service members' rights. And I was glad to have 20 colleagues join me in supporting it. And we should pass it. It's unfortunate that some of our colleagues decided to force this harmful provision in this National Defense Authorization Act, because otherwise I would have been proud to support it. This bill has some great things for our service members and my home state of Wisconsin, and measures that I have long pushed for. This bill invests in our most valuable asset, our people, and I'm thrilled to see that we are giving our junior enlisted troops a well-deserved pay raise, more than 14%, and boosting pay for all others by nearly 5%. This legislation invests in the health and well-being of our troops and their families, eliminating co-pays for contraception for our troops and their families on TRICARE, making telemental health care services available regardless of where the patient is, and so much more. A long-standing priority of mine in this bill and beyond is ensuring that when we use taxpayer dollars, we are supporting American companies and American workers and the American economy. And when it comes to our national defense, this notion is essential for our safety and security. And that's why I'm glad to see steps forward in supporting the Made in America economy. The NDAA puts strategies in place to make sure that we are sourcing things domestically, from high-tech batteries to Navy warships. These suppliers are not only providing the highest quality products, but also creating and supporting good-paying jobs across the country. And Wisconsin is home to many of them. Whether it be the iconic companies like Fairbanks Morse or Oshkosh Defense, or the military installations like Fort McCoy, Wisconsin is crucial in our country's defense. And I'm excited to see that this bill recognizes our contribution, making sound investments in the Wisconsin Rapids Army National Guard Readiness Center to support the training our troops need to stay ahead of tomorrow's threats. And despite all of the common ground that we found and all of the smart investments that we're making in our troops, their families, and our securities, Some folks poisoned this bill and turned their backs on those in service and the people that we represent. This bill should embody the best of us as elected officials, coming together without partisan agendas to keep our country safe and support those in uniform. Sadly, that's not what happened. And in turn, if we pass this bill as is, we're going to rip away the rights of our service members to get the health care they want for themselves and their children. It's wrong, and I encourage my colleagues to vote no. I am delighted this morning to be joined by colleagues who share these concerns and would yield to Senator Kim for his remarks.
Mr. President.
From New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to join my colleagues to call for Section 708 of the NDAA to be removed from the final bill. As you know, I am new to the United States Senate. I come to the floor today with great humility, but also great urgency. Because while I am new to the United States Senate, I have had the honor of serving the past 6 years as a member of the United States House of Representatives, just on the other side of this building. And during my time as a member of the House, one of the things I have been most proud to work on are issues involving our military service members and their families. As a House member, I represented Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst, the only tri-service joint base in the country. Because of that, I represented tens of thousands of military families who signed up to serve our country. When you talk to military families, the last thing you want to hear about is politics. In fact, the last thing they want to talk about is politics. Military families often struggle with sufficient housing or putting food on the table. They face inadequacies in health care. Military spouses often face barriers to finding work. While it is only the service member who swears the oath, it is the whole family that serves. I come to the floor with great urgency because Speaker Johnson sought to politicize this important National Defense Authorization Act by inserting a dangerous provision after the Armed Services Committees in both the House and the Senate came to bipartisan agreement. This kind of action undermines trust in negotiations and sets a dangerous precedent for what is widely considered the last true space of traditional bipartisan legislation. Let's be clear. Section 708 would harm those who serve by denying health care for military families. By banning TRICARE from covering gender-affirming care for minors, we are standing in the way of military families and the health care their doctors have prescribed. We are putting politics into a bill where it simply does not belong. We are sending a signal to our military families that if your loved ones are transgender, we don't have their backs or theirs. And for the former ranking member, as the former ranking member of the Military Personnel Subcommittee on the House Armed Services Committee, there's a lot about this National Defense Authorization Act to support. Our junior enlisted service members will receive a 14.5% pay raise, and all others will receive a 4.5% pay raise. Our service members will have greater access to meal support so they can address hunger in our ranks. They'll have additional funding to improve military construction of housing so they'll have better roofs over their heads. And we made real progress in improving access to health care. These are all wins we should be proud of. They are bipartisan. They build our stronger national defense. That is all the more reason to strip this harmful provision, Section 708, from the bill. We shouldn't play politics with our national security. We shouldn't target transgender youth and further spread fear into a community that has seen so much hate directed towards it. We should pass an NDAA that supports our service members and their families, all of them, without politics or prejudice. I hope my colleagues join me to that end. Thank you.
Mr. President, I rise today to acknowledge the work we have done on a bipartisan basis to draft this year's National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. At more than 1,800 pages, this bill contains wins for our country, our military, and our service members. It provides a raise to all service members with an even bigger raise for junior enlisted troops. It invests billions in needed military infrastructure in Hawaii and throughout the Indo-Pacific region, investments that are critical as we work to counter China's influence and support our allies and partners in the region. And I'm proud that it contains a provision I fought for to create a new major mishaps classifications to ensure better oversight and accountability of major incidents like the 2021 fuel spills at the Red Hill Fuel Storage Facility on Oahu, which impacted over 93,000 people. All of these provisions and many more will support our military, our service members, and their families. In fact, our priority should be supporting the men and women of our armed forces and their families. And that includes making sure they have access to quality health care. But instead of focusing on the things that matter, such as health care, Republicans demanded the inclusion of a provision prohibiting TRICARE from covering gender-affirming care for minors. Despite efforts to stop this provision, to strip this provision from this bill during conference, it's in there. By many estimates, there are thousands of transgender children of service members who are currently receiving gender-affirming care from TRICARE. Under this bill, those children would not be able to access the health care they need despite their parents approving the care. We know what happens when transgender and non-binary children are refused gender-affirming care. According to the Journal of Adolescent Health, rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide all increase. There is no question that this provision will cause concern for service members worrying about their children not getting the health care that they need. And of course, this will cause trauma to the service members, their children, the entire family. We didn't have to do this, Mr. President. We didn't have to impose this cruelty on our service members and their families. I thank Senator Baldwin for introducing an amendment to stop this unnecessary, cruel provision, to strip this provision from this bill, an amendment I and others are proud to co-sponsor. We know that this fight is not over. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. President, so much. And I want to thank Senator Baldwin for her leadership on this issue, for helping us to focus upon this threat to the rights of Americans that is being propounded in this defense bill. I want to thank Senator Markey. I want to thank everyone who is joining with Senator Baldwin on this fight, because today we are considering the National Defense Authorization Act. And embedded within its language would be a ban on TRICARE coverage of gender-affirming care for children of service members in our country. If passed into law, it would be the first anti-LGBTQ law passed by Congress in decades. Since the 1990s, there's been no anti-LGBTQ law which has passed. And if passed into law, it would force thousands of members of the military to decide between service to their country and guaranteeing their child can get the health care which they need. This language is the product of a nationwide campaign against trans rights, a campaign that has facilitated harassment of teachers, bomb threats to children's hospitals, and attacks on transgender people. And this is the same campaign that drives legislators from state capitals to Capitol Hill to insist on dictating Americans' health care decisions. We have seen this playbook before. For decades, Republicans attacked the right to abortion. They slowly chipped away, state by state, law by law, and today there is no constitutional right to abortion. And now they've turned their attention to service members' families. We must fight off efforts by politicians to force themselves into exam rooms. They think they know better than trained healthcare providers and patients. They do not. The only expertise they are exhibiting is an expertise in oppression, suppression, and repression of healthcare freedom, and their attacks will not stop there. Freedom isn't lost all at once. It happens 1 inch at a time. And as the Senate author of the Trans Bill of Rights, this is an inch that I insist that we cannot give. At its best, this institution has affirmed the rights of every American. On this floor, we have expanded access to health care, guaranteed American civil rights, and protected same-sex marriage. And today, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to fight discriminatory attacks on service members, their families, and their health care providers. We must strike this language, and if we do not, we must vote no on the entire bill. To every trans member, every service member, and their families, friends, and communities, I will not turn my back on you. I am with you. And together, we will keep fighting. So again, I thank Senator Baldwin for her leadership on this issue. And with that, Mr. President, I yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from Wisconsin.
I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Kim, Senator Hirono, Senator Markey, for participating in this debate today and for standing firm. As I said earlier, historically, the NDAA has embodied the idea that there is more that brings us together than separates us, that our service members in national defense are not to be politicized, that we put our country over party when the chips are on the table. Unfortunately, this year, that was ignored, all to gut the rights of our service members to get the health care that they need for their children. With that, I encourage a no vote on the NDAA, and I yield back.